Well, it's Wednesday the 18th. I am just finishing myself with a coffee, and then I'm going to be off to Horton Cars in Aylesbury to go and see the Wizard of Cogs and hopefully get the gearbox sorted out. And this is going to be a little bit of a video about what's happened to the car itself, what I'm trying to do to get it sorted, and hopefully a documentation of the final fix. But today it's going to be a case of driving over to there, which is about 111 miles. It's going to take me about 2 hours. I'm going to drop it off for Graham and his team, and then drive a loan car back, which I think is going to be a Volvo, an old P2 Volvo V70 D5, which will be interesting. So I've not driven a P2 for a while. So yeah, I'm going to finish off my coffee, and then I'm going to head over. So next update will probably either be on the motorway or when I arrive.
Right, off we go. So it is, what time is it? I don't know what time it is actually. That's I'm doing well with this whole vlogging driving lark. What time is it? Let's have a look on the mood. So it's 7:52. I've made it most of the way along the M1. A couple of little accidents and bits and pieces to deal with. I've pulled over for a cup of hot brown at the motorway services at junction 15A. I've forgotten the name of them, so I'll put the name of whatever the services are in the description. But thankfully it was blessedly quiet. So I've got about 38 miles to go, and having stopped and used the facilities and grabbed a coffee, it looks like I'm going to get there now for about 5 to 9, which is a little bit behind where I wanted to be, and I'm slightly worried because the junction over there looks like it's going to be a right pain in the arse going by the traffic indicator that I can see. But there isn't much I can do about that, so I'm just going to continue to plod on. I was planning on recording another section of video with this camera. However, two things have happened. Firstly, the voice activation on this GoPro seems to have given up altogether. The idea was I was going to drive and tell the camera to turn on when I needed to, and tell the camera to turn off when it needed to turn off. And it is currently obstinately refusing to do anything, so I probably need to give the camera a firmware update. And the mount that I'm using on the glass isn't my proper GoPro one, because I couldn't find that this morning, so it's one of my cheap ones, and earlier on it fell off after about 5 minutes worth of driving. So I'm not optimistic that it's going to stay on the glass terribly long to do much more driving. So with that in mind, I'm going to finish my coffee, and then I'm going to continuing moseying over to Horton Cars, and we'll see what happens.
Yards, cross the roundabout and take the second exit, A43, towards Oxford.
So I'm 29 miles away at the moment. Arrival time's come down a little bit, maybe just before 9 o'clock. And whilst I'm sat here in traffic and there isn't much else to do, I thought I'd do a little bit of an explanation about what's gone wrong with the car and why I'm taking it to Horton's. So when I bought the car originally, I was conscious of or aware of a drumming noise at certain speeds, and subsequently about, I'm going to say about 4 weeks after I bought it, this developed into sort of a violent shuddering and shaking vibration at about speeds of about 40, 45 and over, particularly going up inclines. Did a bit of research at the time.
After 150 yards, cross the roundabout and take the second exit, A43, towards Oxford.
Didn't plan this very well. Did a bit of research at the time, and it looked like it was going to be the torque converter that was the problem. I passed it back to the dealer who'd originally sold it to me, and he did actually say to me that he had noted the problem.
Cross the roundabout and take the second exit.
Tell you what, let's get through this bloody roundabout first without anything crashing into me, and then I might try and do a little bit more on where I am and what's happening, because people choose all myriad of lanes there. It's interesting. So anyway, as I was saying, I've got another roundabout in 3/4 of a mile, so I don't know if I've actually picked a terribly sensible part of my route to decide to try and do this recording. Anyway, the long and short of it is, the fella that sold it to me said, oh yeah, I did notice something peculiar when I bought the car. I reset the adaptations on the gearbox and it went away. Obviously it had come back, so I sent it back to him. He went away and did some research. They took it to Volvo, they applied some different software to it, and it was no better. In fact, if anything, it came back slightly worse. That included doing a fluid change, and then over the course of about 1,000 miles,
after 400 yards, cross the roundabout and take the second exit, A43.
Over the course of about 1,000 miles, it settled back down again and seemed to be happy and healthy again. What sort of happened?
Cross the roundabout and take the second exit.
What's happened subsequently is, whilst I was on holiday in Scotland, this fault seems to have returned. Now, I put the car through quite a lot up in Scotland, including some fairly spirited driving, going backwards and forwards to the Isle of Skye, but it didn't really misbehave until the last day. Apart from a little bit of slipping which I noticed. It was very strange. It was just sort of going along, and then all of a sudden the revs just rose, almost like you were driving a car with a CVT gearbox. It was very, very, very odd. Lifted off the throttle, put it back down again, the car went into gear as normal. I didn't think anything of it other than, ooh, that was a bit weird.
Follow A43 for 9 miles.
I've got a bit of road now, 9 miles. I can talk to you properly without being interrupted by the sat-nav woman. So on the drive back, it's just done a dodgy change there. On the drive back, I started to notice, this is on the last day, coming back out of Fort Augusta, so the car was starting to shudder, and I was starting to get gritty gear changes, and that's probably the best way that I can describe the two sets of symptoms that I've been getting. So it's twofold. You can drive the car along like this, about 45 miles an hour on a relatively light incline, and you'll get a shuddering, shaking all the way through the car, a bit like driving over a cattle grid. And the other thing that I've noticed is these kind of unpleasant, gritty gear changes. So first and second tend to be okay, but once you get up to speed and it locks into each gear, those gear engagements aren't smooth. Now, it's not flaring or slipping and kicking and banging. It's that sort of almost intermediate stage between it, I think, between it going into gear and the torque converter locking up properly that's the problem. In any event, it's come back. I thought it might settle down when I drove it to Wales. It didn't get any better, and it's now been like this since the sort of end of November, beginning of December. And I had a really hard time deciding what I was going to do. Was I going to get it fixed? Was I going to just move it on to somebody else? I wasn't sure what to do with it. I didn't particularly like the idea of moving it on to somebody else, because I think this is the reason this car was traded in the first place by the previous owner. So I've already inherited somebody else's problem. You know, the fluid change settled it down for a while, but it was obviously, whatever's gone is clearly still on the cusp of failing completely. So it's got to be sorted. I could have just taken it to somewhere like WeStealAnyCar.com. Sorry, that's what I call WeBuyAnyCar.com. And they would have no doubt just put it in park, reverse, neutral and drive, which is all the things it does normally, and it would have been fine, and I could have just traded it in and moved it on. The downside or the problem with that at the moment is used car prices are absolutely bonkers, insane. Some of the vehicles I've been looking at have been sort of £6,000, £7,000, £8,000 more expensive than they were this time last year in some instances. And when you start thinking about it like that, I mean, even to get back in this again, if I was to trade this in, because I'll only get trade-in money for it, so I'll lose, you know, £4,000 instantly, even with the decent used prices are at the moment. I'd have to spend £4,000 for whatever I get in terms of selling this on to get back into what I'm already in. And if I wanted a newer car that was ULEZ, maybe something that had got 12 months cast iron warranty through a manufacturer's approved use scheme, well then I'm going to be looking at closer to 8, maybe even £9,000 difference. And when I started doing those man maths, it just didn't stack up. So I'm hoping with this, taking it to Horton's, that even the worst case scenario repair, which for me I think is a reconditioned gearbox, that's everything, torque converter, valve body, all the bands and clutches out, do the job lot, is probably going to be somewhere around the region of £3,500 tops. What I'm hoping it's going to be is just the torque converter itself, which I'm expecting to land in the region of around £1,500. But we'll have to see what happens. Like I say, I mean, I'm driving it quite gingerly at the moment, and I'm going the wrong way. Excellent. Oh no, I'm not going the wrong way. Oh, that's confusing. Two devices, very different instructions. Oh well. Right, I'm going to stop rambling now because I was doing that. I thought I was just staying on the A43. My main sat-nav thinks I'm staying on the A43. Google disagreed with that, and now I'm crapping myself quietly. So I'm going to stop recording now, and then the next video update will be when we get to Horton Cars. There and he stuck them on the others, so it just doesn't fill you with confidence for doing anything else. There you go, there you go. There you go. I feel better now, it's done it.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, torque converter will cure that.
Yeah.
This road always seems to
provoke it.
So it's a week later, and I'm shortly going to be on my way to go and collect the XC60. It's had the torque converter replaced, so we're going to see how that goes. We found a few other issues as well, which I'll go into a little bit more detail about later on in the video. And I'll also be giving you a driving impression of the 267,000 mile V70 D5 that I got to drive as well, which was kind of cool. I've never driven a car with that much mileage on before, and I've got quite attached to it actually.